Here we have our factoring review. The first trinomial that we're going to start with is 3x squared minus 13x plus 4. Now, while you factor this, remember, don't use a third-party app. Do the math yourself. Don't use the technology to do it for you. You can chat me your answer and see how you're doing. You can pause the video and then you can see the results. So there's a couple different ways we could try this. Guess and check is the way that we would prefer that you would factor this. We've done it with factor by grouping before. After we break it apart and figure out what different values could be, we come up with 4 terms, and we do factor by grouping. But factoring by guess and check is the preferred method from pre-calc. So we're going to start out with a set of parentheses because a trinomial should break down into 2 binomials. So we're going to look at what times what could make 3x squared. And that would have to be 3x and x. 3x times x makes 3x squared. Now, what you need to look at is what 2 numbers are going to make 4. You got a couple choices. You've got 4 times 1, and you've got 2 times 2. I often tried 2 and 2 first. So when you try 2 and 2, that's the guess part. Now we have to check it. Three times 2, when you FOIL these, you got to do the front, which is the 3x and x. Then you do the outer, which is the 3x times 2. So that's 6. Then the inner, which is 2. 6 and 2 doesn't make 13. 6 and 2 might add to be 8. It might subtract to be 4, but it's not going to get to 13. So it's clearly not 2 and 2. So maybe it's 4 and 1. So we have our 3x and x. That makes our 3x squared. That's of course right. We have our 3 and 4. Well, 3 and 4 can add to be 7. 3 and 4 can add to be 1, -1, subtract really, but that's not 13. Maybe if we switch the 1 and the 4. That's our 3x squared. That's the front. Then we do the outer. That gives us the 12. Then we do the inner. 12 and 1. 12 and 1 gives us the 13. And then your last is going to be your 4. So you have FOIL. To get -13, it's going to have to be a -12 with a -1. So there's your factoring. 3x minus 1 and x minus 4. Okay, now this one's a little bit different. Go ahead and try that. Chat me the answer. With this one, you notice that there are 4 terms to it. 4 different terms. So we're going to use factor by grouping. So we circle our first group and we circle our last group. So what we're looking for here is what's the GCF that can come out of this first group? Because they both have an x squared in it. X cubed is made up of x times x times x. And x squared, of course, is just x times x. So they both have x times x in it. They both have x squared in it. The x cubed has an extra x, but the x squared has nothing but a coefficient of 1. You have to have the 1 there. You got to hold the place value. Bring down your positive, bring down that sign every time, whatever that sign is, comes down. What number goes into 5? Well, 5 goes into 5. You've got to have the plus there. And we'd have a 5. So 5 times what makes 5x? 5 times x does. 5 times 1, a positive 1. Notice that the parentheses are exactly the same. Parentheses have to be exactly the same. If they are, then you can factor this by grouping. If they're not exactly the same, then this is not factorable by grouping. So we bring down our x squared, we bring down our plus 5, we bring down just 1 of the x plus 1s. You don't say x plus 1 squared, and you definitely don't write it twice. So there is your factoring of that cubic equation. Okay, try that one. To factor this one, again, we notice that there are 4 terms. So if there's 4 terms, we're going to try factor by grouping. We've got to get the same thing in the parentheses for this to be accurate. So we look at what number goes into 12 and into 9. Well, 3 goes into 12, 3 goes into 9. You have p cubed and you have p squared. So we're going to pull out a p squared. You can't pull a p cubed if there's only 2 of them, but you can pull 2 of them if there are 3 of them. Does that make sense? So 3 times what makes 12? 3 times 4. So with an extra p to now make 3 of them. And 3 times 3 be a positive 3 to get a positive 9. Bring down your sign. Factor out what you can. What number goes into 6? What number goes into 8? 2 goes into 6 and into 8. So 2 times 4, 2 times 4 with an additional p, and 2 times 3 with no p's. Now notice that a negative and a positive make a negative. So this has to be a negative 6. So it's got to be negative 2 times a positive 3 to make a negative 6. And notice here, these are the same. So yes, this was factor by grouping. So your final answer is 3p squared minus 2. And then what you have in the parentheses, 4p plus 3. If you want to check your answers, that's the advantage of factoring. You can always multiply these together. So 3 times 4 is 12. A square and a singular is p to the third. 2 plus 1 is 3. That gives you 9p squared, negative 8p, and negative 6. So you can see that that's what we started with. So you can always check your work to see if there was a silly mistake. Okay, here's one. Give this one a try. So we're going to look at this. This is the difference of two squares. We have a minus, which makes it difference, and we have two perfect squares. That means we can take the square root of the first term. We can take the square root of the second term. When you take the square root of 16, you get 4. When you take the square root of x squared, you get x. When you take the square root of 25, you get 5. So here we have 4x and 5. We also get 4x and 5. So when we multiply these together, we get 16. X times x is x squared. We get 20 and 20. Outside and inside both make 20. 20 and 20. So we're going to have a positive 20, and then we're going to have a negative 20. That makes 0 of them in the middle. Then that would give us a negative 25 for the end. So this is the difference of two squares. No such thing as sum of two squares. You cannot factor x squared plus 9. That does not equal x plus 3, x plus 3. You cannot factor it. It would be considered prime. All right. We have x cubed minus 27. This one is the difference of two cubes. All right, there's a formula or a pattern that goes with the difference of two cubes. You would take the cube root of both of those, and that would give us a minus b. Then you're going to square the first term, you're going to square the last term, and you're going to multiply those two together. This is the same sign. This is the opposite sign. And then this one is always positive. So SOAP helps you remember, same, opposite, always positive for your signs. So in this case, x cubed minus 3 cubed. You can see what the A and the B are. Do we have the difference of 2 cubes? Yes, we do. We're cubing 3 to make 27. We're cubing x to make x cubed. So we say x minus 3. You square your x. You multiply the 2 together and change the sign. Then you square your 3. And we can check to see if that's accurate. That's x cubed. That's a positive 3x squared. That's a positive 9x. Then you have a negative 3x squared, a negative 9x, and a negative 27. These are going to cross out completely, and you're left with x cubed and negative 27. So you can see that it works. Sum of 2 cubes is the same thing. A cubed plus b cubed. That's going to become a plus b. A squared, multiply the 2 together and change the sign, and then square your b. All right. Good job, everybody.